What up, team? It's potential. Potential is everything that this system is about. I think it's worth reminding people that when the Azerite system was announced, my first videos on it were super excited. There's a huge amount of potential, which is a big talking point right now because people are like, yeah, it's kind of disappointing. The first round of stuff that we've gotten here is pretty disappointing to say the least, but it has potential, and it really, really does. But we can't say that it's going to be a certain way. We can't do that. What we can say is it might be that way, but we can't convince ourselves it's going to be that way. Because I see a lot of people now looking to 8.1 because we know some class changes will come there. And if you watched my choosing main video, we don't know the breadth and scope of that. It might just be some minor changes to Shadow Priest and Shaman, for example. And everything else is just left as it is, which will be disappointing for many of you, I'm sure. But we can't suggest that it will be a certain way, especially based on what we have now. This is what we have in front of us. This is the evidence we have to work with. But I think we should talk about the potential for this. So let's clear up one thing right now. People are saying at 8.1 they might change the traits. They're going to add new and interesting traits. Blizzard has to be careful about how they do this, because one of the big selling points of the Azerite system is that it's not random. It's not random. If you get this head, as we've said several times, from Ataldazar, it will be that head until the end of BfA. Dungeon loot, based on what we've seen in Legion, will remain identical. Just the item level will go up. That's it. So once we say to ourselves, this is... I can't find head. Classic Mike. These traits that we see here will be the same traits that we have at the end of BfA. Most likely. They could overhaul the system. Probably not, though, because that is an enormous undertaking to say... One, we need to change 211 plus traits, right, that we talked about in the spreadsheet. And also, people will have farmed for their stuff. People will have gone, that's the best one for me. I need to go and get that, and then work towards that for months. And Blizzard can't really change that. And as we know, a big part of WoW these days is to keep the dungeons relevant forever. That's why Mythic Plus exists. So how could they introduce new and interesting things? Okay, couple of downers to start off with. The likelihood is that if they do, and they will, introduce new traits when the new raid tier comes, that they'll probably attack it like Legion, because highly unlikely they're going to add more loot to these dungeons. They could, probably not. So what they're probably going to do is every raid tier introduction include a dungeon with it. And that will contain the new Azerite stuff. That seems pretty likely to me. So it's the same way it works in Legion. We got Tomb of Sargeras, we got Cathedral of the Eternal Night, we got Antorus, we got the place that shall not be named. And in there, maybe that's how they add in new traits to the pool. But they can't really be that good if they go with that system, because then that kills the rest of the dungeons. People won't want the loot for the rest of the dungeons if they release new head, shoulders, and chest into that one dungeon, or two dungeons, or whatever they decide to include, that are just significantly better than the ones that already exist in the game, because that destroys the parity they're going for. And they are going for parity. It doesn't matter what route you choose to play your end game, PvP, Mythic Plus, raiding as the standard 3, you'll be attaining the same stuff, right? You'll all have the same traits, and they'll all be worked out that way. So to expect that within this outer ring, later on, we would get really good traits, probably not, because that then dwarfs the other ones, and that makes a big problem. That destroys the entire intent that comes with along with having the Mythic Plus system, having dungeon loot in the first place, really disrupts the status quo of what they're trying to achieve. So what could they do? That doesn't mean they're screwed, by the way. The likelihood, there's a couple of likelihoods here. One, they introduce a new Azerite armor slot. Say legs. Let's just say legs. It could be anything. And within there are new traits. So you still get to benefit from the old traits, and the legs would have a better trait, right, that you get in there. Would they then put them into the older dungeons? Who knows? Maybe, something like that. But then there's a problem with that as well. That would then take up 5 armor slots with Azerite armor. And one of the things we know is they wanted to get rid of tier sets because they said it was taking up too many armor slots, taking away choice for the player, all that kind of stuff. So probably not. The more realistic idea would probably be another ring. Another ring that you get to choose from, or an extra couple of traits that come in here. Now, I say that they could put extra traits into this armor. So as the item level goes up with a new raid tier, that's typically what happens. All the item level in the dungeons bumps up so that they're all matching, and we've got this parity of item level, is that the newer stuff has another trait in here. Also quite likely. And the reason for that is it seems to me that the most obvious addition that's going to come over the course of the expansion is the ability to choose 2 things out of the outer ring, which is the class ring. And the reason I say that is, and this might happen very early, I don't believe it's been confirmed, but it seems most likely. If we go into the Uldir raid, so this is the Azerite armor that drops in raids, and we look at it, that comes with a trait that only works in Uldir. It's the universal trait. But as it currently stands, choosing this means I can't take the class one. Right? So this has to be so good that I can't take the class one. Or they make this so good that you're forced in your raid Azerite armor to take this trait over the in what some cases more interesting one, or the one that works with your setup of gear. So same with PvP. As I said, I'm currently wearing PvP armor. I've chosen the class trait Whiteout, but in order to do so, I had to not choose the PvP universal trait. I can't choose that. So that only works in PvP and would provide an advantage in PvP, which is likely where I'm going to be. So over the war campaign, it's pretty likely at some point they'll just say you can choose 2. So you can have the specific one for the area you're in, so that'd be the raid one or the PvP one, and you can have the class one. And if they introduced extra, let's say they doubled them up, so there's 2 fire, there's 2 frost, and there's 2 arcane in this mage example, then you could have 2 class ones, or you could have the specific one and the class one. It makes sense, doesn't it? Like, it makes sense that at some point we'll be able to choose 2 things out of here. Otherwise, what's the point? If the class one is so much better, why have the raid only one? And is it a nice choice for players to have to choose the raid only one, which is, again, it's just a passive stat boost, over the one that works well with my class? That's something that I think is, I mean, I think I've covered the bases there. The other option, which is almost a definite, I would imagine, is as the item level goes up, another ring is introduced. And that contains something more similar to these things. These are like, there's 9 of these shared across every class. There's, as I said, there's some healer ones and some tank ones thrown in there. That also contains some more interesting stuff, some fun stuff to grow our power. And over the course of the expansion, that armor just gets more rings with more choices to do. That could be something that happens there. Now, when it comes to potential, there's a lot they could do. There really is no limit. It's their game. They can do what they want. I think they are locked in terms of strength of the outer traits. So I personally would prefer it if we just got extra rings and they had more interesting stuff in them. And the reason I say that is if they are going to bind themselves to just class-specific stuff, they are completely locked without taking up another Azerite armor slot, like we said earlier, with them being on par with what we already have. They have to be balanced around that. What you can't have, and this is something we do have right now, I know a lot of people are asking, what are my best traits to get? It's an obvious question when going into a new expansion. Which ones do I want to be targeting? Which ones are better for me? They haven't tuned them yet. Some of them are ridiculously powerful. Fun is different, right? We're talking about power here. Some are very powerful, some are really weak. And that will come down to a tuning pass, which has got to happen like any day now. But I probably won't be here to cover it because I am going on vacation. But it will be soon, so we can start to plan that out. But hopefully that makes sense to you as to why, or the potential for this system to go well. And I do want to put a personal note here. I hope it does. I really do. Because this system could be really good. They could have done so much better with this. As we said, considering the Azerite armor does change slightly, it's just a universal trait, depending on the source you get it from, they could have made the entire set, say, from dungeons, great for Mythic Plus. Like a lot of stuff that works wonderfully in a 5-man environment and counters the affixes. Works well with certain affixes. That would have been really good. With the raid stuff, they could have designed the traits around the idea of being in at least a 10-man plus group, right? And the mythic stuff, which has to be 20, could have been designed around 20. And we could have had some teamwork stuff going there. And there's history of that. We know they like group-based stuff. Pantheon trinkets, the WOD ring, all these things are designed to work with your fellows in that environment. They could have also done it with World Quest stuff. They could have made really fun, interesting World Quest sets that I would have gladly equipped. Even though I've got raid gear, that's great in raids, but for outdoor world stuff, or maybe farming old transmog where we're in stop, start, burst damage environments, they could have built some cool sets around that. But they haven't gone that road. Doesn't mean they can't in the future, but they haven't gone there yet. Let's talk about some other stuff then. So we showed on the web show, so I didn't really show it on YouTube, and I'm kind of regretting that I didn't do that, is that they've changed the way item scaling works. So what I'm talking about here is when they budget an item. So they say an item is item level 355, and then they have a calculation. That should have X amount of main stat, intellect, or strength, or whatever, and it should have Y amount of secondary stats. And this ideally keeps things in perfect order, right? So the item level increases also linearly increase the secondary, the bonus stats that come with that item, but they're not jumping around. So there's a pair of shoulders that have absurd amount of stats on them. There's a pair of shoulders that have no stats on them, right? They have a simple calculation. Now, in order for BfA to do what it's trying to do, which is item level is king, because that's kind of how the community has made it. Blizzard isn't completely at fault here. The community has made I don't care what garbage bag I wear if it has a high item level, because that helps me out in my lone wolf pug style world, right? Makes no sense in organized raiding, but in the pug world, which a lot of people play in now, that kind of makes sense. So in let's have a look. This is Legion, so I'm going to show you Legion now. So this is how the items are budgeted in Legion for raw stats. As you can see, there's kind of a tilt towards main stats, that's the blue line, and secondary stats linearly increase. Now, what happened in Legion, as we all know, or should know, is that because this didn't increase that much, and secondary stats are clearly so much better in certain environments, and I'll explain very basic why. At a certain point, you're hitting so hard because of your main stat, right? That's all that buffs, is just how hard you hit, that it actually becomes far more beneficial to start critting more while doing that damage. So stacking crit, for example, which was pretty plentiful in Legion, is actually more damage, because getting like an extra 1 damage from intellect is not as good as getting regular like double damage from critical strike. And haste would work the same way. It's better to get more haste because I'm hitting this hard, I should just hit more often. Works out more damage than just trying to stack this while not caring about secondary stats. Now, this led to obviously problems in the pug world, people equipping whatever old random shit and doing less damage, which was a big problem. We did a lot of videos on this, is people equipping random nonsense. In BfA, they've changed it to this. So what you can see here is that main stat, strength, intellect, or whatever, is now exponentially going to increase over the course of BfA. And as you can see here, secondary stats, way squished down at the bottom. So I'm here, right? My character is like 355, so he's like in the middle, and I'm starting, and this is only the first tier of raiding, and we haven't got access to the really good stuff yet. You can see I'm already climbing this ladder where intellect will be just so good, right? So going back to our previous example, yeah, my next item level upgrade might increase my damage by like 6, whereas haste would be far better for me. In BfA, that intellect jump is going to be like 100, and the haste is only going to go up like 2. So you can see here with the secondary stats, they're massively crushed down. So, and the whole purpose of this is just to make sure that if you get an item that's an item level upgrade, equipping it should be a DPS gain regardless, because it's just going to be making you hit so much harder regardless of how fast or whether it crits or not. It's just hitting you so much harder. That's the idea. It won't apply to absolutely every class. There'll be some finicky stuff going on somewhere, but in general, that's how it's going to work. That's the numbers right there. If I remember, I'll stick it in the YouTube description so you guys can take a look at it. It's a wonderful post and you should have a read. Okay, but what does this mean then? Well, on the face of it, it says what a lot of us have been saying is like, actually, if your character starts off slow at the beginning of BfA because there isn't much haste, or anything like that, then it's likely not to get that much faster by the end of the expansion because there just isn't enough secondary stats. Not entirely true. This is a good thing. Kind of. This, though, carries a lot of stats. Now, I want you to note something here. My character is 350. This is only 320, and this does level up, and it carries a lot of secondary stats. When I say a lot, that's item level 320, right? Look at how many secondary stats. That's 180 of each. This is a 370 back. It has 87 haste and 42 mastery. Do you see the difference? This carries a lot of stuff. Now, what are the implications of this? I think they do understand, like on my basis, they understand two things. One, the community as a mass function of what they do and what they forced upon themselves by rules will do terrible things to their characters to make their lives generally easier, such as equip any old dog shit that happens to Titanforge, because it makes this big number that they changed to make the big primary number go up. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter if there was another number here that said your DPS and that went down. This number goes up. And for most people, that's a big deal because that makes them more likely to enter pugs and stuff, right? That means that maybe not because they're dumb, which I think is the go-to, is like, why are you wearing, let's say I need crit haste. Why are you wearing all verse mastery gear? That's terrible for you. We see that all the time in Legion. Are you bad? Maybe. maybe. But I refuse to believe, honestly, RPGs and managing stats and stuff is something kids have been playing since they're like 5 or 6 years old. This isn't complicated stuff. If you were playing, like, say, Chrono Trigger, and you were equipping plus magic items on your physical damage dealer, you're a bit of a twat. And therefore, fuck off. No one wants to play with you because that's really stupid. That's massively stupid, especially when there's a magic user right next to you, right? But most players are stuck in a world where this number is more important because it opens doors for them. Yeah, we did this in the newbie project. So maybe Blizzard's got a little smart about this and kind of had to accept players are going to do it no matter what we do. And therefore, we strip away the secondary stats from here and we just bake most of the gains into this item so that they are naturally gaining the important secondary stats, and they can equip whatever dog shit they want in other slots. Because remember, Azerite armor doesn't have any secondary stats. It's all gone. It's all gone. And then this will just naturally take care of everybody. And this could be what does make your character faster, crit more, do all that kind of stuff over the course of the expansion. It's just the Heart of Azeroth. Now, that's kind of a lie. Not just the Heart of Azeroth, because there are other items that do not carry main stat, and that's the important thing. So the Heart of Azeroth is just over budget as it is. But what the hell? It's artifact quality, guys. Look at the color of it. It's not blue, not purple. My God, this thing's amazing. Rings. Rings are going to become very, very important because rings are the only other items that generally don't carry a main stat. Your gloves do. Your weapon does. Right, trinkets are ropey. I mean, they carry main stat as well, as you can see there. In fact, you can see because of BfA, I've kind of rolled with stuff that gives main stat, and it's worked out very well for me to do that. Rings are going to become super important because you can see they have a lot of stats on them. You can see there it's like 200 a piece, where it's half, less than half for everything else, right? It doesn't matter if they're 360 or whatever. This is a 330 ring that has like 200 of a stat and 150 of another, and you compare it to like a 360, it's 100 of one and 60 of the other. So the fact that it doesn't have this exponential item level increase on the main stat means there's way more budget in the item for secondary stats. So what I'm saying to you with all that bluster is it should be okay. Is it interesting and fun? I think not. I think it's really sad because it's the only logical thing I can think of is we cannot trust the main player base not to gimp their own characters just to make this number go up. We can't do it. People have been doing it for years. Doesn't matter how many resources and channels there are telling them that is wrong, do not do that. They still keep doing it because it actually has a benefit to them. Right? And that's the reality. It has a benefit to them. I would prefer if they found guilds and got on, but remember, according to the Master Loot thing, that's full of cloaked, hooded figures denying loot to everybody, apparently. So it seems like Blizzard's kind of gone, all right, if that's what you're going to do, we're going to outplay you. It's going to make the game way dumbed down, because this is no other way of looking at it. This is way dumbed down. If the number is bigger, put it on, in most cases. If you're clever and you have 2 items that are the same item level, then you can choose one with the better stats. Of course you can. No one's saying you don't do that. But generally, if you get a Titan Forge, stick it on. Because we're just going to buff the shit out of this stat that we know everybody is wearing. And that's where most of your secondary stats are probably going to come from, to try and, over the course, because this is way under leveled, by the way. As you can see, it's like level 320 compared to everything else I'm wearing. And as you can see, it's nowhere near the level I need to actually unlock the rest of my armor. I need to upgrade it there. I need to upgrade it there. And if we go to the raid, if I change this to Mythic, you can see it needs like item level 31. Heart of Azeroth level 31 to actually unlock that stuff. And this is all first tier stuff. That needs Heart of Azeroth level 33 to unlock it. So I will point out here, the Heart of Azeroth level and its item level are kind of different. There are quests that just boost it up. Like, you'll just get a quest that's like, I'll add 15 item levels to your Heart of Azeroth. They're separate things. So there you go. That means that potentially, and I think this is a positive video, potentially, Azerite armor could be really good. Could be. But we don't know that, and we've got no evidence of that. But it could be. We'll have to wait and see. They certainly have not said in 8.1 they're going to do anything with it. Don't get that in your head. That's just fabricated by the community in hopes and dreams. And it could also mean that we no longer really need to care about secondary stats because they've taken that out of our hands. Whether you like that or not, doesn't matter. For the top end, it won't matter either. I think I need to be clear on this, because at the top end, we're likely to be hitting repeat items of the same item level and therefore are still able to maximize our stats appropriately, like a normal player would do in an RPG, you would hope. So at the top end, it shouldn't be a big deal either. We'll still be choosing the better rings. We'll still be choosing the better boots, legs, and stuff. It's just it has less impact on us, right? And it has way less impact on the casual player base who's just sticking whatever old crap on. I'm not saying everybody's doing that in the casual player base. Don't put words in my fucking mouth. But you know 100% players are doing that. They are getting any old shit that has a bigger number than what they're wearing, and they're sticking that on. That's happening regularly. So, positivity. It could work out really good. My big concern, as always, is simply, right now, going into BfA, I don't have anything to look forward to on any of my characters. That's my big disappointment. And I think that's a fair thing to say. On my mage, I'm not looking forward to anything that I get with this new system. And seemingly going all the way up until the end of the first raid tier and throughout the game, there is nothing for me to look forward to. That's my issue. Okay. There we go. But it could get better, and it could take care of a lot of our worries with whether or not we'll be able to speed up our characters. Will they play similarly to how they played in Legion a little bit, minus the legendaries? Maybe. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Saturday. It is roasting here, but hopefully you guys are having a good time. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.